The engagement party was supposed to be perfect. Claire made sure of that. She spent weeks planning every detail, down to the napkin fonts, the lighting for the golden hour photos, and a playlist so curated it could have doubled as a Spotify wedding commercial. We rented a beach house in Santa Monica with these massive windows facing the ocean and enough string lights to make the whole thing feel like a movie. Her movie. I showed up early like I always did. Set up the speakers. Checked the mix she'd given me. Claire didn't trust the DJ to get the vibe right on his own, so I offered to help. It was one of those quiet compromises you make when you love someone who likes control. She called it teamwork. I called it keeping the peace. But something was already off. The minute I walked upstairs to drop my bag in the guest bedroom, our bedroom for the weekend, I noticed it. It hit me before I even opened the door. Cologne. Strong. Clean, spicy. Masculine. Definitely not mine. I froze. There, hanging casually over the back of the chair by the vanity, was a crisp white button-down shirt. It was neatly folded, but it didn't belong to me. I hadn't packed one. I didn't even own anything that looked like that. Thin vertical stripes, a high-end tag stitched into the collar. And the smell, whoever wore it hadn't just dropped it off. It still carried the scent like it had just come off someone's back. I picked it up, held it at arm's length. For a second, I told myself it must belong to Claire's brother, or maybe her cousin Brandon who helped unload catering supplies earlier. But that didn't track. None of them had gone upstairs. Claire said she was still getting ready when I arrived, and her family had been helping outside. I would have seen someone bring clothes in. On the dresser, next to her perfume bottle and a pair of hoop earrings, sat a lipstick-stained champagne flute. Red lipstick. Not coral. Not the one she always wore, the shade I used to tease her about for getting all over my coffee mugs. This was different, bolder. And the weird thing? There were two glasses, hers and this one. Still damp. Still fresh. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I really didn't. But something started to churn in my gut. A slow, sinking weight that I couldn't shake. I left the shirt where it was. Didn't mention it right away. Went downstairs and tried to rejoin the party planning energy. I told myself I was being dramatic. Claire was always scatterbrained when prepping for events. Maybe she borrowed the shirt to steam out wrinkles or something. Maybe she'd explain. But by the time guests started arriving, that feeling hadn't gone away. If anything, it got worse. She came down the stairs like nothing was wrong, like she hadn't been MIA the past 20 minutes. Laughing, brushing curls behind her ear, her phone still in hand. She kissed my cheek and smiled big for the crowd, not even a whisper of guilt in her eyes. Then came the toast. Claire always had a way of commanding attention. She tapped her glass, got everyone to quiet down, and stood in the center of the crowd with the ocean behind her. The setting sun lit up her hair like something out of a travel brochure. "To love," she started. "And to my fiancé Jake, who's so jealous he nearly lost his mind over a forgotten shirt in the bedroom." The room burst into laughter. I didn't. I stood there, stunned. Heart pounding in my chest like a fist against the inside of a locked door. Everyone turned to me, expecting me to laugh along. Even her mom giggled. Claire tilted her glass toward me with this little smirk like we were sharing an inside joke. Except we weren't. She'd found the shirt, knew I'd seen it, and instead of talking to me, she turned it into a joke. A way to get the room on her side. I gave her a tight smile, but inside, something broke. I didn't know which part hit harder, the deflection, or the fact that she knew I'd noticed and didn't care. She kept going after that. Transitioned into thanking everyone for coming. Talking about how grateful she was to be surrounded by people who believed in love. And something about destiny. But I wasn't listening anymore. Couldn't. I scanned the crowd and saw the photographer, him. His name was Jordan. She'd hired him just a few days before the party. Said she found him on Instagram. "He's a genius with golden hour sh*TS, she'd said. I hadn't thought twice about it then. Now I couldn't stop thinking about it. Everywhere I looked, he was there. Jordan. Always nearby. Adjusting her hair. Showing her sh*TS on his camera. Laughing at things she whispered. It wasn't flirty, exactly. It was worse. It was familiar. There was a moment, I remember it too clearly, when she leaned over his shoulder to check a picture, and her hand rested on the small of his back. Not flirtatious, natural, like they'd done it 100 times before. That's what got me. It didn't feel new. Later, when everyone had moved out onto the deck for drinks, I noticed she kept disappearing. Just coordinating something, she'd say. Checking the sh*t list. But every time she vanished, so did Jordan. I wasn't even trying to catch her. It just kept happening. A flash of movement behind the curtain. Her laugh from behind the sliding door. A half-open hallway closet with 2 shadows inside and silence when I walked past. I waited outside once, timing it. 12 minutes. Then she came out adjusting her necklace. When I asked where she'd been, she just smiled. Fixing my dress. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her. But my hands were shaking. My head was swimming. Was I crazy? Was I reading into things? The whole night started to feel surreal. Like I was the only one seeing the cracks in the facade. Like I was the problem. By the time the music was winding down and the last guests were leaving, I stood at the edge of the patio staring at the surf and wondering when things had shifted. Wondering if it had started that day, or if I just finally caught up to it. Claire came up behind me and wrapped her arms around my waist. I flinched. "You okay?" she asked, her voice light. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. "You seemed a little off during the toast," she added, teasing. I didn't respond. Couldn't. Because in that moment, I realized what had changed. It wasn't just the shirt, or the laughter, or the missing minutes. It was her confidence. The way she lied so effortlessly. The way she pulled it off in front of everyone. She didn't panic when I found the shirt. She anticipated it. She prepared for it. She made it a joke. And that meant she'd done this before. The worst part wasn't the suspicion. It was knowing deep down that this wasn't the first sign. It was just the first one I couldn't ignore. After the party, something in me wouldn't let go of that shirt. It haunted me, not just because of what it meant, but because of how she spun it, how she turned my instinct into comedy, how the room laughed at my expense. I kept replaying it in my mind. The crowd, the champagne glass, her smirk, the way her hand rested on the photographer's shoulder like it had always belonged there. I tried to let it go. I really did. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw the reflection of that lipstick glass in the bedroom mirror, and the way Claire avoided my gaze when I brought it up later that night. She said, "Don't do this, Jake. Not tonight." And that was it. I tried to move on. The next morning, we packed up and drove home, and I pretended things were fine. I told myself I was overthinking. Stress. Maybe I was being too sensitive, or maybe, like she joked, I was just jealous for no reason. But paranoia doesn't come out of nowhere. It builds. Slowly. Started small. She began setting her phone face down on the table, which she'd never done before. At first, I barely noticed. But then it was always face down, at home, at dinner, even in bed. Notifications silenced. No previews. When I casually asked about it one night, she brushed me off with a laugh and said, "I'm trying to be present. Isn't that what you wanted?" Then came the new perfume. I mentioned it in passing. The scent was different, headier than what she usually wore. But she looked genuinely annoyed that I noticed. "Oh, so now I can't change perfumes without getting interrogated?" I dropped it, but the scent didn't. She wore it every day. Subtle. Strategic. Like she wanted someone to notice, but maybe not me. Then came the laptop. She used to leave it wide open in the kitchen, no password, no need. I'd borrow it all the time to check the weather or order groceries. Now, password protected. Locked every time she stepped away. When I asked her the new password one afternoon while trying to reset the router, she hesitated. Said she changed it for work security. Work security? Claire worked in marketing. The excuses were stacking, but still, I didn't want to believe it. Not Claire. Not the woman I was about to marry. I told myself she was just stressed. That maybe I was the problem. But the signs didn't stop. One night, I walked past her office and heard her laughing. Not the polite kind, the genuine kind, that low laugh she used when she was completely at ease. I peeked in and saw her with headphones on, recording a voice note into her phone. I asked, "Who's that for?" She jumped. "Oh, just recording something for the podcast," she said. "Since when do you have a podcast?" She smiled like I was being ridiculous. "It's just something I'm experimenting with. Marketing stuff. You wouldn't be interested." That same night, when I asked to hear it, she said she'd already deleted the file. Said it didn't turn out the way she wanted. It was a lie. I knew it, but I didn't call her on it. And I hate that about myself. That I let it go. That I gave her the benefit of the doubt when the doubt was becoming the entire benefit. Then came the name, Tyler. I only heard it once, buried in the middle of one of those voice memos she forgot to delete. I was looking for a receipt in her email when her phone lit up with a notification. Voice note number 27. I pressed play. And Tyler said I should just go with what feels natural. He always knows how to calm me down. She paused, then laughed into the mic. But I guess that's kind of the problem, right? I froze. Tyler? I didn't know a Tyler. She didn't work with one. At least not that I knew of. When I asked her later, casually, trying to act like it wasn't gnawing at me from the inside, I said, "Who's Tyler?" She blinked. Too long. Then, "Oh, he's just a coach from this business seminar I went to last month. You probably saw the flyer." I hadn't. I would have remembered. That night, the voice memo disappeared. She said it got deleted accidentally when she was clearing space on her phone. It was all so tidy. Too tidy. I started noticing other things. Little things. Like the way she always checked the mirror before heading out, even if it was just a Target run. The way she suddenly became obsessed with editing wedding photos, despite the fact we hadn't even picked a date yet. She said the photographer sent too many, and she wanted to narrow them down. But I never saw them. Once, I offered to help, and she snapped, "I've got it, Jake." Her tone was clipped. Different. It was like she wasn't just hiding something. She was hiding from me. And then I noticed something I'd never seen before. One afternoon while we were watching a show on the couch, Claire reached for the popcorn and her sleeve slid up. Just for a second. But it was enough. There was a faint line on her ring finger. A pale indentation like a mark left behind after you've worn a ring for a while and then taken it off. Except her engagement ring was still on. I stared at it, wondering. Had she been taking it off when I wasn't around? Why? She caught me looking and smiled. But it didn't reach her eyes. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. But everything wasn't okay. Not even close. I started replaying things from the last 6 months. Conversations that didn't make sense at the time. The sudden work meetings. The unexplained absences. That one night when she said her phone had died while she was out with friends. And yet, later, when I checked her screen time out of quiet desperation, it showed hours of activity. She wasn't even trying to be careful. Or maybe she didn't think I'd look. Maybe she thought I'd never suspect. Maybe she thought she'd trained me well enough to ignore the signs. And for a while, she had. But once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. There was a shadow that followed her now. An unspoken gap between us that used to be filled with trust and now buzzed with static. Every laugh sounded rehearsed. Every kiss mechanical. She started to feel like a stranger wearing someone I used to love. I'd lie in bed next to her at night and listen to her breathing, wondering who else had heard it. Who else she shared her stories with. Who she smiled for when I wasn't looking. I didn't have proof. Not yet. But I didn't need it. I knew. I knew she was slipping away from me. Not by accident, but by choice. She wasn't fighting for us anymore. She was rehearsing for her exit. One perfectly curated post at a time. And the scariest part? I started wondering if she'd ever really been mine to begin with. It happened a week after the party. By then, my mind had become a reel of theories. I wasn't sleeping right. I'd lay awake next to Claire, her back turned, her breathing steady like nothing was wrong, while I stared at the ceiling wondering how much of my life had already been replaced. Replaced. That word haunted me. And then came Malibu. She called it a girls' weekend, said it was last minute, that her friend Aubrey booked an Airbnb for a little pre-wedding unwind. She rattled off names I recognized, some from college, others from her marketing job, and said they'd be gone 2 nights. No boys allowed. I nodded. I didn't argue. I didn't ask to drop her off. That part of me, the one that still believed her, was fading fast. But I did check her story. I didn't mean to at first. She'd posted a picture to her Instagram that evening. One of those blurry, artsy kinds where everything is bathed in golden sunset light. In the photo, she was sitting by a small fire pit in a hoodie I didn't recognize, holding a wine glass, smiling like she hadn't lied to me for months. It would have been a normal post, except for the shadow. It was faint just behind her, half cut out of frame, but it was him, Jordan, the photographer from the engagement party. I recognized the outline of his shoulder, the slight upward tilt of his head. I zoomed in, enhanced the brightness, and there it was, his stupid camera strap hanging across his chest. The same one he wore around the party. The same one he claimed never left his side. I stared at that image for a long time, my thumb hovering over the screen, waiting for a sign. Something, anything, that I was wrong. I wasn't. I knew it before, but now I had proof. And I needed to see it with my own eyes. I didn't tell anyone. I just got in my car and drove. The address she'd sent earlier for emergency contact purposes was already burned into my brain. A beachfront property just outside Malibu. A place we'd once joked about staying at for our honeymoon, if we ever stopped spending money on custom wedding decor. 2 hours later, I was parked on a hill just above the house, tucked between the coastal shrubs, hidden by the growing darkness. The beach curved below like something out of a postcard, and there they were, Claire and Jordan. There were no other cars in the driveway. No sign of girlfriends or bridal energy or even laughter. Just the two of them sitting close by the fire, legs touching. They weren't talking. They were holding hands. Not the way you hold a friend's hand when you're sad or drunk. The way you hold it when it's yours. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just stood there and watched the life I thought I was building vanish into orange firelight and whispered laughter. And for a second I imagined yelling. Storming down the hill, demanding answers, throwing the ring into the sand right at her feet. But I didn't. I stood there quietly, my hand in my pocket, thumb rubbing against the inside of my ring. The one she chose, the one we picked out together like it meant something permanent, something sacred. Pulled it off. Not in anger, not as a statement, just carefully, deliberately, like removing a bandage. I held it between my fingers, feeling the weight of everything it had come to symbolize. Blind trust, wasted effort, the slow unraveling of someone you thought you knew. And then I let it fall, right into the sand. It disappeared instantly. She didn't see me at first. Not until Jordan stood up to throw another log into the fire, and her eyes followed him, then lifted to the hill, to me. She froze. Her body stiffened. Her mouth opened slightly. For a second, I wondered if she'd run toward me, if she'd try to explain, to plead. She didn't. She just stared, like she couldn't figure out whether she was caught, or simply done pretending. I didn't wave. I didn't speak. I didn't owe her that. I turned around and walked back to my car. When I got in, my phone buzzed. A message. Claire. 3 words. You misunderstood everything. That was it. Not, I'm sorry. Not, it's not what you think. Not even, please let me explain. Just another performance. Another deflection. The script playing out exactly as she wanted it, me, the paranoid fiancé. Her, the misunderstood woman rediscovering herself in soft linen and ocean views. But this time, I wasn't buying it. I didn't reply. I didn't even open the message. Instead, I started the engine and drove. For the first time in months, I wasn't driving aimlessly. I wasn't questioning myself. I wasn't trying to figure out how to fix something that was never mine to fix. I was just leaving. I got back to the apartment around 3 a.m. The lights were off. Her scent still lingered on the sheets, and her travel bag was gone from the corner of the room. But it didn't feel like absence. Felt like release. I started packing my things before the sun came up. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just moved. Item by item, drawer by drawer, I took myself out of that place. I filled 2 suitcases with the essentials and left everything else. The furniture, the dishes, the memories. Let her keep it. Let her build whatever curated life she wanted with it. I wasn't a part of the brand anymore. I left a note on the kitchen counter. Just a single line, written in her favorite gold ink pen. You can only rehearse love for so long before the audience stops clapping. And then I locked the door behind me. I didn't know where I was going yet, but I knew what I was leaving, and that was enough. I didn't tell anyone. Not my brother. Not my parents. Not my closest friend, Alex, who had stood beside me when I bought the ring. I just vanished. Rented a short-term apartment on the edge of the city. Bare walls, echoey floors, a twin bed that squeaked every time I shifted, and dropped off the face of the earth. I changed my number, deleted my social media accounts, and sent an email to work saying I needed a few weeks off for personal reasons. And then I was gone. Claire didn't try to find me. Not really. Not directly. She didn't call. She didn't show up at my door. But I still felt her everywhere. A day after I left, I saw her post. My buddy's girlfriend texted me a *T, unaware of what had happened. It was a photo of Claire on that same beach, wrapped in a beige shawl, hair in soft waves, staring at the horizon like it had whispered her purpose into the wind. The caption read, "Learning to let go. Dove. Let go? Let go of what? Me? Our relationship? The truth?" The comments were worse. Heart emojis, clapping hands, quotes about healing and self-love and stepping into your truth. One even said, "Proud of you, Queen." I stared at the screen, stunned. That post got more likes than our engagement announcement. More shares, more hearts. Like this was her breakthrough moment. Like betraying me had somehow freed her. That was the first time I felt it. Not confusion, not sadness, but anger. Not the loud kind. Not the type you punch walls with or scream into your pillow. This was colder, heavier, like something hot pressing into my chest and refusing to move. I set my phone face down and stood by the kitchen sink, gripping the counter until my knuckles turned white. The fridge buzzed behind me. The clock on the stove blinked the wrong time. Everything felt off, like I'd woken up in someone else's life. But it was mine. She had turned our collapse into a campaign. That was the part that K** led me. Not just the betrayal, but the way she spun it. Like she was the one who needed sympathy. Like she was the one who had been holding on too tightly and now was finally finding herself because of it. She took everything we'd built. Every late-night talk, every stupid inside joke, every plan for the future, and reframed it as some kind of lesson she had to outgrow. I wasn't her partner anymore. I was a phase, a learning curve, collateral in her rebrand. While I was sitting alone in a barely furnished apartment wondering how long it would take before I stopped checking the shadows, she was out there soaking up likes, reshaping the narrative to make herself the protagonist. And the world applauded. I didn't eat for 2 days. Not because I was punishing myself, but because food didn't make sense anymore. Hunger felt irrelevant. My body was still in shock, even if my mind had already moved past denial. The ring was gone. The home was gone. Her voice, the one I once found comfort in, was now just a memory filtered through a speaker I didn't want to hear. Sleep was worse. I'd drift off for 20-30 minutes at most, then bolt upright convinced someone was whispering. Once, I swore I heard her laugh. Another time, I woke up with the taste of her perfume in my throat. But no one was there. Just me. Always just me. So I started walking. Late nights, early mornings didn't matter. I'd walk the streets near the apartment with my hoodie pulled tight and my hands in my pockets, just trying to feel something other than hollow. I'd pass closed coffee shops, flickering signs, alleyways I didn't recognize, until my feet hurt or the sun came up. That's when I started seeing the world for what it was. Busy, loud, indifferent. While my life had cracked open, the city hadn't missed a beat. People still got on buses. Dogs still barked at pigeons. Couples still held hands and laughed like they'd never lied to each other. And I hated them for it. Not because they were happy, but because they didn't know yet. They hadn't been gutted. They hadn't looked the person they loved in the eyes and watched them rewrite history in real time. They hadn't been me. One night, I walked past a bookstore with a display about love after loss. Big red letters on the window. A heart cracked in two. I don't know why I went in. Maybe I wanted to punish myself. Maybe I just needed shelter from the cold. I stood in the aisle flipping through some self-help book, not even reading the words, just staring, trying to feel human again. That's when I heard a voice behind me. Quiet, unsure. Jake! I turned. It was Mia, an old friend of Claire's. One of the few I always liked. She'd been at the party, the engagement, all of it. Her expression softened the second our eyes met. "Oh my God," she said, stepping closer. "Where have you been? Everyone's been asking." I laughed bitterly. "Everyone?" She winced. "Well, Claire, mostly, said you needed time." I raised an eyebrow. "That what she's calling it?" She hesitated. "Look, I don't want to get involved. When I saw that post, I figured something had happened, but I didn't know it was that bad." For a second, I wanted to ask what she meant, what Claire had told people, but I didn't, because I already knew. Whatever version of the story was out there, it didn't include the man by the fire. "I'm okay," I lied. Mia gave me a long look. "No, you're not, but you will be." Then she did something I wasn't expecting. She hugged me, just a quick one. No pity, no advice, just contact, and it almost broke me. After she left, I stood outside the store for 15 minutes just breathing, trying not to cry. That was the moment I realized how lonely I'd become. Not just because Claire left, but because no one knew. No one saw the whole picture. To them, I was the guy who got too quiet after the engagement. The guy who couldn't handle the pressure of a wedding. But I wasn't quiet because I was afraid of commitment. I was quiet because I had committed, fully, completely, and got thrown aside like it was a seasonal subscription. Claire didn't just cheat on me. She replaced me before I even knew the audition was over. I went home that night and opened her old Instagram again. I'd blocked her earlier, but now I was curious. Morbid curiosity. I used a burner account. New photos. Beach days. Studio selfies. Hashtag authentic life. Her latest post showed her standing in front of a mural that said, "Choose yourself." She was smiling, glowing. It wasn't until I scrolled through the comments that I stopped. One stood out. "Jordan, couldn't be prouder of you. Waterwave camera with flash." And just like that, the curtain dropped. She wasn't hiding it anymore. She didn't need to. The new version of Claire didn't require secrecy. She had already edited me out of the story, and the world kept clapping. But I was done being quiet. I never expected to find anything. I really didn't. I wasn't digging for revenge or closure anymore. I wasn't scrolling her feed at 3 a.m. or trying to decipher hidden meanings in her captions. I had stopped looking. But sometimes, the truth finds you when you're no longer obsessed with it. It started with a box. Not a metaphorical one. An actual cardboard box marked wires and cables that I had shoved into the back of my closet 3 apartments ago. I'd been trying to set up my new laptop, finally accepting that work from home was going to be my reality for a while, and I needed an adapter buried somewhere in that mess. I pulled it out, dusted it off, and opened it. And sitting right on top of a tangle of old chargers and Ethernet cords was a black external hard drive I didn't even remember owning. It wasn't labeled. No stickers. No tags. Just blank, matte black plastic. I almost tossed it aside. Almost. But something made me plug it in. Maybe curiosity. Maybe fate. It took a few minutes to load. It was old, glitchy, probably hadn't been connected to anything since my college days. But when the folders finally popped up, I saw something strange. A folder titled sync_backup_JC. Jake and Claire. I clicked. Inside were subfolders, **TS, saved text messages, voice notes, even a few audio files I must have backed up without realizing. I didn't remember doing it. Maybe it had auto-synced from my old phone or hers, Back when we were still merging accounts, still romanticizing the idea of being one unit. I opened the **TS first. Most were mundane. Grocery lists, couple of memes, a photo of our Airbnb confirmation from a trip up the coast. But then I found the texts, dozens of them. Claire to someone named Tyler. Not recent. Dated all the way back to the beginning of our relationship, nearly 2 years ago. Around the time we had just started saying, I love you. The same week we went to Palm Springs for our first anniversary. I remember that trip. I brought her breakfast in bed and she cried when I told her I wanted to marry her someday. And during that same week, she was texting him, Claire. He's so sweet it's almost sad. He has no idea. Tyler. LMAO. How serious is it though? Claire. Serious enough for a Pinterest board. Upside down face but not serious enough to be real. Tyler. You gonna tell him? Claire. Why? He's perfect on paper. That's enough, right? I scrolled until my eyes blurred. She had joked about me, mocked me, detailed my habits, my overuse of emojis, my cooking attempts, the way I'd tuck the blanket around her feet because she always got cold. She turned all of it into punchlines. She even referred to me as her audience. I felt sick, but the worst was still coming. A photo. It was grainy, taken in a mirror, our bedroom mirror. Claire stood in front, posing like she was mid-laugh. She was wearing my shirt, the one I thought she loved because she always stole it after laundry. But there was a man in the background, barely visible, out of focus, sitting on the edge of the bed, head down, shirtless. I zoomed in. The shape of his jaw, the tattoo just under his collarbone. It wasn't Jordan. It wasn't Tyler. It was someone else. There had been more than one. And it hadn't started months ago like I thought. It had started almost immediately, maybe even before she said yes. I closed the folder and sat there, staring at the wall, listening to the hum of my laptop fan and the pounding in my chest. I don't know how long I sat like that. Time blurred. I was numb, then furious, then back to numb again. It was like watching the past collapse inward. Everything I thought I knew about our timeline, when things had shifted, when she'd drifted. None of it was accurate. She hadn't lost interest somewhere along the way. She had never been all in. The entire relationship had been a performance. And I had been the stage. I spent the next hour listening to one of the saved voice notes. It was her, talking to herself, probably rehearsing a message for Tyler. She said, Sometimes I wish Jake would catch me, just to get it over with. It's exhausting pretending all the time. But he's so damn trusting. Or maybe he's just that desperate to believe in me. She laughed. That laugh I used to love. That laugh she used on me. I shut the laptop and walked outside barefoot, needing air, needing sky, needing something real. It was raining. Of course it was. The streetlights looked like distant stars through the drops, and the steam rising from the pavement made everything feel dreamlike. Like I wasn't awake. Like none of this was mine to carry. But it was. This was my story now. I walked until I couldn't feel my feet. Until the cold burned the rage into something steadier. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want to post the **TS or blow up her world or message every guy I'd seen in those threads. I wanted only one thing. To stop carrying her lies as my burden. She chose this. All of it. And now, she could have it. I printed the messages and left them in an envelope on her doorstep with one line. This isn't jealousy. It's fact. The next day, she texted, You're acting like a character from a cheap soap opera. I didn't reply. But later, her ex, Eric, messaged me. You're not the first. He told me everything, how she had done the same to him. The cheating, the gaslighting, the silence. It wasn't just betrayal, it was a pattern. I stopped looking for closure. I ran in the mornings, took photos for myself, not for a curated feed. I kept the engagement ring, not as a wound but as proof I walked away. One afternoon, I saw Claire laughing in a cafe with someone new. I didn't feel anything. Not pain, not hate, just peace. Her world was a stage. Mine at last was real.